beyond with Shamarie, where the questions matter more than the answers, and every conversation opens a door.
Hello, this is Shamarie. Today's episode is called Resources Without Love Become Power. And I want to say from the beginning, this is not simply an episode about money. It's about receiving care, receiving support, receiving love, help, receiving recognition, receiving what we need without feeling as though we have to justify our existence before some visible or invisible gatekeeper. Because sometimes the deepest questions do not arrive neatly. They do not come as a tidy little insight with a bow on top. Sometimes they arrive through the body, through a conversation that will not leave us alone, through an old memory, through a sudden realization, through something physical that feels symbolic. For me, recently, it came through my right palm, the hand of receiving, an area of blistered skin in the center of my palm. And after some days, the dead skin began to come away, not the living skin, the dead layer. And I found myself looking at this hand, tender, healing, exposed, and asking a question that was not really new, but clearly reached a deeper layer. When did receiving become so complicated? Not just receiving money, receiving care, receiving support, receiving help, receiving love, receiving something I actually want without needing to prove that it is reasonable, practical, affordable, acceptable, or allowed. When did money stop being a resource and become an authority? That is the question I want to explore today, because money itself is not the enemy. Money is meant to be a resource, a tool, a means of exchange, a way of moving through the physical world. But when love is missing, resources change shape. Money without love becomes gatekeeping. Support without love becomes ownership. A gift without love becomes a debt. Practicality without love becomes a veto. Spirituality without love becomes a bypass. And love without responsibility becomes entitlement. This is where the distortion begins, and this is where I found myself thinking about what I now call the false ledger. The false ledger is a record book that many families, relationships, and systems seem to use. It counts visible money. It counts who earned, who paid, who provided, whose name was on the account, whose name was on the asset, who appeared to hold the resources. But it does not count everything. It does not count unpaid labour. It does not count emotional labour. It does not count caregiving. It does not count the nervous system cost of holding a family, a relationship, a business, or a life together. It does not count the cost of always being the capable one. It does not count the invisible work of smoothing, anticipating, adjusting, remembering, and absorbing. It does not count the years of doing what had to be done because someone had to do it. So the false ledger might say, this person provided, but it may not ask, what did the provision cost the person receiving it? Did the support come with dignity? Did it come with freedom? Did it come with control? Did the person who had the resource also begin to feel like the person who held authority? That is the danger. Because when resources are separated from love, they can become power. And when money becomes power, it starts behaving like a gatekeeper. It starts asking who is allowed to receive, who is allowed to want, who is allowed to choose, who must justify, who must wait, who must shrink, and who must prove that their need is acceptable. This is not only a personal question, it is also a mythic question. In my earlier blog, Return to Eden, I explored the old inherited story around women: desire, shame, blame, and exile. That old pattern where female wanting becomes dangerous, female choice becomes blameworthy, female knowing becomes suspect, and women are asked to carry the consequences of a story they did not write. That piece was about returning from exile, but this new reflection feels like the next chamber, because even if we return from exile, there is another question waiting at the gate. Who controls access? Who controls access to safety, to money, to rest, to support, to pleasure, food, beauty, to care, to the ordinary dignity of being able to want something without that want being immediately placed on trial? If Eden was the place before shame and exile, then this is the question of what happens at the gate. Who gets to decide who receives? Why did so many of us learn to ask permission before opening our own hand? This also connects to something I explored in The Manifestation of Moral Law. There I wrote about the way manifestation teachings can quietly become a spiritual report card. If something good happens, we are told we must be aligned. If something hard happens, we are told we must not be. Struggle becomes evidence, poverty becomes evidence, illness becomes evidence, a difficult relationship becomes evidence, a nervous system at capacity becomes evidence. And suddenly a person is not only living through something hard, they are also carrying the extra burden of spiritual interpretation. You manifested this, you attracted it. Why did you allow it? If you were healed, you would not be here. If you were aligned, this would not be happening. But real life is not a seminar room. Real life includes timing, history, health, money, nervous system limits, children, family systems, dependence, safety, exhaustion, and consequences. Outcomes are not a moral scorecard. And now I want to add another layer to that. Spiritual bypass does not only shame the person in need, it can also protect the person who withholds. Because if someone's struggle is described as their lesson, their karma, their vibration, or what they are allowing, then the person with resources does not have to ask what love, responsibility, or clean exchange might require of them. They can step over the person in the mud and call it wisdom. They can withhold support and call it non-interference. They can judge the wound and call it discernment. But if a belief makes it easier to step over someone in need, that is not wisdom. It is a permission slip for withholding. And the same distortion can happen with the word of love. Someone can say, "I love you," and still not see the cost of their behaviour. Someone can say, "I love you," and still expect your needs to orbit theirs. Someone can say, "I love you," and still use money, silence, guilt, delay, or practicality as a form of control. Someone can say, "I love you," and still refuse to examine what their love asks you to carry. That it does not always mean the feeling is false. Sometimes people do feel affection. They feel attachment, feel a preference, they feel need. They may sincerely believe they love. But love, if it is to become real in the world, must become responsible for its impact. Love has to be willing to ask, do my actions make room for you? Do I see accurately? Do I count what you give? Do I respect your no? Do I respect your wanting even when it does not match mine? Do I use my resources to support life or to keep authority? Do I want closeness without accountability? Do I call it love when I'm really asking for immunity? Love is not proved by saying love. Love is proved by what it does. And love without responsibility can become entitlement. That sounds strong, I know, but I think many of us have accepted counterfeit versions of love because the word was there. The word love was spoken. The feeling may even have been sincere, but the behaviour still asks us to shrink, to wait, justify, absorb, carry or disappear. And once we begin to recognise the difference, it becomes much harder to receive the counterfeit version. But I do not want this episode to become about what is distorted, because clean love exists, clean exchange exists, clean giving exists, clean receiving exists, and sometimes the cleanest examples are very ordinary. When my boys were young, we used to have chicken and chips as our weekly takeaway. It was affordable then, and it came from a shop run by two Greek brothers. I remember once telling them how much I enjoyed their food, and one of them said to me very simply, "We always prepare our food with love." And they did. You could feel it. It was not fancy food. It was not dressed up as spirituality. It was hot chicken, beautiful chips, and an ordinary blessing of not having to cook that night. But the food carried care. Later, I was looking to buy a second-hand car. Somehow, one of those same brothers was looking at the exact same car. When he realised, he said to me, "You need it more than me. Don't let them use me as a bargaining tool, because I'm backing out." That moment stayed with me. He did not shame me for needing the car. He did not make a performance of generosity. He did not use his position to get what he wanted. He did not allow himself to be used as leverage against me. He simply saw the situation and stepped aside. That is clean love in action, not romantic love, not dramatic love, not love with a speech attached. Just a human being seeing another being clearly and refusing to make life harder just because he could. Clean love does not always arrive as a grand declaration. Sometimes it arrives as good chips, fair prices, and someone quietly refusing to become another obstacle. That memory matters because it proves that real things exist. Once you have felt the difference, you know. Clean exchange is not guilt, it's not pity, it's not a debt, it's not theft, it's not domination. A clean exchange has dignity in it. It allows giving without self-erasure. It allows receiving without shame. It allows selling without stealing. It allows needing without becoming a burden. It allows wanting without asking a gatekeeper for permission. It allows sharing without disappearing. A clean offer is not theft. It's an invitation. A clean gift is not a chain. It is a movement of care. Clean support does not say, "Now I own you." It says, "May this help you stand more freely." A clean love does not say, "You owe me your silence because I helped you." It says, "I care about the effect I have on you." And perhaps this is what many of us are really healing. Not only our relationship with money, our relationship with receiving. The places where receiving become tangled with shame, debt, permission, surveillance, judgment, obligation or control. The places where our needs were treated as inconvenient. The places where our wanting was called selfish. The places where our giving was expected but not counted. The places where the false ledger recorded the wrong story. So I returned to my hand, the right palm, the center, the tenderness, the old skin coming away. I do not want to overstate it, but I also do not want to dismiss it. The body has its own language. Sometimes it speaks in symptoms, sometimes in timing, sometimes in strange little symbols that arrive exactly when the psyche is ready to see them. For me, it felt like the receiving hand shedding an old layer. Not the living hand, the dead layer, the part that had formed over receiving, the part had tried to protect the tender centre, the part that perhaps mistook closure for safety. And now the hand is still tender, but it is open, and that feels important, because the question was never only, am I worthy to receive? The question matters, but it is not deep enough. The deeper questions are, where did I learn that receiving needed permission? Where did I learn that wanting had to be justified? Where did I learn that support meant ownership? Where did I learn that love could ask me to disappear? Where did I learn that money had authority over me? Where did I learn that giving counted only when someone else received it, but not when I gave it? These are not small questions. They are ancient questions, family questions, cultural questions, spiritual questions, body questions. And perhaps healing begins when we stop asking the false ledger to tell us who we are. Money is a resource. Love is an action. Receiving is not a crime. Need is not moral failure. Wanting is not exile. Support does not equal ownership. And clean exchange does not require shame. A wound may remain visible, but it no longer gets to close the receiving hand. The false ledger is not the book I want to live by, and perhaps this is dramatic, but perhaps it is dramatic in the way a Greek tragedy is dramatic, not because it is exaggerated, but because it is a warning about what happens when a hidden law is left unexamined. Greek tragedies were not simple stories of suffering. They were warnings. They showed what happened when pride goes unchecked, when power refuses humility, when a family curse keeps repeating, when no one questions the law until the cost has already been paid, when the body, the land, the gods, or the truth finally demand recognition. This is now how I see the false ledger. It was not just a personal money wound. It was an old pattern moving through families, relationships, spiritual teachings, and social systems. The real am I worthy to receive? It was, who taught me that receiving needed permission in the first place? Once the question opens, the old story can no longer continue unchanged. Thank you for listening to Journeys Beyond with Shamarie. If this episode spoke something to you, you may also like to read the full blog, Resources Without Love Become Power, on my website. So until next time, go gently, listen deeply, and remember, receiving is not a crime.
Every journey changes us a little. Thank you for letting this one be part of yours. Until we meet again.